It's almost something that you can't really describe until you really start to implement it into your own life and you are able to seriously watch the magic unfold for you. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Linda. If you are new here, I am a board certified doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and I love helping others find personal empowerment in their life's journey. Today, I want to talk to you about the law of detachment, but in a more specific sense, the art of being non-attached. It's something that has completely shifted my own inner reality in the way that I approach my goals. So I really want to share that aspect of my journey with you, and at the very end, I'll share some actionable steps that you can start implementing into your life as well. Okay, but before we get there, what actually is detachment? The law of detachment states that when you separate yourself from specific emotions and from specific goals or outcomes that you have in mind, it makes it a lot more likely that you'll actually achieve your goals. You may or may not be familiar with this idea. It's gained quite a bit of popularity in the wellness circle in recent years. And so I've been hearing about it for a long time, but it wasn't something that I really fully understood, or I couldn't ever really wrap my head around it until I actually started implementing it into my own life. And I think that what I was bumping up against the most in terms of my inability to really grasp this concept was I wondered, like, how can you be non-attached or not attached to your goals while still working towards them? That just didn't really make sense to me. And so, like I mentioned, it wasn't something that I really grasped until I started practicing it myself. And what I learned during this process is that what it means is not focusing so much on the very specific outcome that you have in mind when you start working on a goal. And also with that, releasing all of the emotions that are tied to the achievement of that goal. And it was honestly, I am not exaggerating when I say it, but it was really mind-blowing to me when it finally clicked in my head of this is what this actually means, and this is what it actually feels like to practice the law of not being attached. Because once I started practicing this in my own life, I was able to be in the present moment so much more deeply, and I was able to realize and just kind of embrace the knowledge that either way, I'll be okay. Whatever it is that happens, it's gonna be fine. I'm okay either way. I've always been someone that has a lot of aspirations and goals for myself. And if you've been watching my videos up until this point, then you know that I'm also someone who struggled with anxiety for a very long time. If you also happen to be someone who has very specific goals, a high standard for yourself, and you also have anxiety, then you know that your anxiety can oftentimes get in the way of you achieving your goals, which then gives you more anxiety, and then it kind of just turns into this really uncomfortable cycle. So over the years of me experiencing this for myself, it really started to affect my self-confidence, my self-esteem, the belief that I had in myself that I could actually reach all of these goals and aspirations that I had set for myself. And another thing that I noticed during this process of how I used to approach my goals beforehand is that even when I did achieve a goal, I was never fully satisfied because it never ever matched this image that I had in my head of what it was supposed to look like, and more importantly, of what it was supposed to feel like inside when I actually achieved these goals that I had set for myself. It literally felt like I was just in this endless cycle of it feeding into itself over and over and over again. And then not too long ago, I started reading a book by David Hawkins called Letting Go. It's an amazing book. I love recommending it to my clients, especially those who are dealing with a lot of difficult emotions or going through a very tough period in their life. It's really great for people who struggle with anxiety and depression as well. So if that interests you, I highly recommend it to go check it out. But there's one specific section of the book where he discusses desire. And it's such a great quote that I have to read it to you, like word by word. But basically what he says is, when we say that we desire something, we are saying that it isn't ours. And this puts a psychic distance between ourselves and what it is that we want. When we surrender the emotion of desire and instead merely choose the goal, picture it lovingly, and allow it to happen, it does, because we see that it is already ours. And I noticed that when I made the shift to this way of thinking, but also not really thinking about it, just allowing it to be, things started happening in my life so much faster than I honestly would have ever imagined or anticipated. And if I hadn't been experiencing it for myself and it had been somebody else telling me about their own experience with non-attachment, I don't know if I really would have believed it, to be honest, because it's almost something that you can't really describe until you really start to implement it into your own life and you are able to seriously watch the magic unfold for you. I noticed that when I started really like letting go and not being so attached to the specific outcome and not being attached to all of the emotions around it, it became so much easier for me to actually start taking aligned action that was taking me closer to my goals. And in that same sense, I stopped thinking about it so much. It just stopped taking up so much mental space in my life, even though I was making more steps and more progress than I ever had before. For example, I use this method to help me heal my gut by completely changing the way that I was eating. Not that I was eating unhealthy before, but I just decided to make a very significant shift in what I was feeding my body, and it allowed me to heal my gut. And this is from a point in my gut health where doctors really couldn't even figure out what was going on. They had no answers as to why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, why I was in pain. My gut completely healed itself within a couple months. I was able to increase my athleticism again. I started losing fat. I started gaining way more muscle. I noticed that I started getting more career opportunities. I started meeting the right people. And honestly, I just started feeling more fulfilled with my life exactly as it was. And as a result of just like not being so hyper focused on something, but having like this great sense of like energy and flow and things just lining up so well, and me making so much progress on these goals that I had had in my mind for such a long time. And, you know, for whatever reason, for all of those mental blocks that I had at the time, I wasn't able to actually make much progress on. To see all of that switch so quickly and not being attached to it, my confidence just went up so much. And honestly, along with that, I stopped caring about what other people think. And it was so liberating and such a stark difference to how my internal world had kind of been existing up until that point. So when I tell you that making this shift in your way of thinking and in your way of being will bring magic into your life in so many different ways, I am not exaggerating. Clearly, I'm a fan. So how can you start incorporating these things into your life? First is to start practicing the letting go part of it. So at its most fundamental, most basic form of this practice is your emotions. So when a particularly hard emotion comes up, or oftentimes like those thoughts that we have are tied to a specific emotion. So if you've been working on like anxiety, depression, or any kind of mental health stuff, it helps to figure out what those repetitive thoughts are linked to in terms of the emotion. And so when you feel that emotion, let it come up, sit with it, let yourself feel the emotion exactly as it is. Don't try to stuff it down. Don't try to distract yourself from it. Don't try to incorporate like some coping mechanisms that you might have. Just sit with it, because when we try to stamp those feelings down, when we try to stuff them down somewhere that we don't have to pay attention to them, it actually starts to build energy. It gives that emotion energy, and eventually it's going to come out in one way or another. So when you let go by surrendering to feeling that you're feeling, it allows it to run its course and it allows it to leave your body. Number 2 is to identify your goal and then let go of wanting it. And what this means is that you're okay either way. Like, you're fine, you're okay. When you want something, when you really want something, you're hyper focused on it, it's actually a form of resistance. Like I mentioned earlier, wanting something implies that there's a state of lack, that you don't have it already. And when you let go of that resistance that's associated to the feeling of wanting something, you allow the energy to flow, and you're allowing all of these opportunities that you might have never thought of to come into your life. And oftentimes it's these unexpected opportunities that are working in your favor and that are taking you closer to that goal that you want to achieve. And number 3 is to fall in love with the process and stop thinking so much about the results. And this applies to anything, whether you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to improve your own inner world, you're trying to improve the relationship that you have with yourself, the relationship that you have with others, you have specific career goals that you have in mind, you want to start a business, whatever the goal that you have is, fall in love with the process of that day-to-day actionable steps, getting into that flow of heading in the direction of that goal without being so worried and so hyper fixated on this result that is in the undetermined, undefinable future. Instead, embrace that shift in your lifestyle and just fall in love with what is present for you right now. Fall in love with the process and allow it to become a part of you. I can promise you that if you follow these 3 steps, the results will come. As David Hawkins says, what we hold in mind tends to manifest. So let go of the wanting and realize that that dream life is already yours.